So when I was younger, some of the first books that I really dove into when I was getting involved in politics, it was Noam Chomsky stuff. But also, I was really interested in atheist stuff. So I read a lot of the Sam Harris books and the Christopher Hitchens books, but my favorite of all of them was honestly Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. And to this day, I think that's a good book. It's really just specifically focusing on the issue of is there a God or is there not a God, right? It doesn't get as political as like Sam Harris's stuff was getting very political. It was the War on Terror era and things of that nature, but he was less political, right? But now he's like a crotchety old man, and the old brain is not working too good anymore. And so here we have a situation. He was at some sort of an event, and shout out to the people from Do Dissidents here, and Russell Dobelar. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, Russell. But they're going to go ahead. They asked Richard Dawkins a very simple question, right? Apparently he said something out there about the pro-Palestine protesters, and it was kind of disparaging. And so they ask him, hey, man, why do you think their motive is nefarious? Can't their motive just be benign? And watch how he absolutely implodes and flips out and humiliates himself on this. And this really goes to rip the mask off of what the role is in today's day and age for the original new atheists, as they call them, the like very militant atheists. Let's watch.
All right, you said you felt that the students protesting were driven by anti-Semitism?
Yes.
Do you feel it's possible they're driven by horror at the slaughter in Gaza?
Do what, sorry?
Do you think they're driven by horror at the slaughter in Gaza? Is it necessarily anti-Semitism?
Of course they're not driven by the horror and the slaughtering. You mean...
Of the students protesting?
Well, are you recording this? I'm not, put that away. I don't do recordings.
Okay.
That was hard to watch for so many reasons. First of all, look, if I'm just keeping it real, and this is harsh, but it's true, he looks like he's like minutes away from passing away, right? Like everything, he's got the old man mannerisms and walking and like the brain functioning really slowly, it seems like. Let's watch it one more time.
All right, you said you felt that the students protesting were driven by anti-Semitism?
Yes.
Do you feel it's possible they're driven by horror at the slaughter in Gaza?
Do what, sorry?
Do you think they're driven by horror at the slaughter in Gaza? Is it necessarily anti-Semitism?
Of course they're not driven by the horror and the slaughtering.
I think he said, did he say, of course they're not driven by the horror and the slaughter? Or of course they are?
Necessarily anti-Semitism?
Of course they're not driven by the horror and the slaughtering.
It seems like he said, of course they're not driven by the horror and the slaughter in Gaza.
You mean...
The student...
Oh, he's not following, bro. That was the most straightforward question I've ever heard in my life, and he's struggling to comprehend it.
Protesting.
Well, are you recording this? I'm not, put that away. I don't do recordings.
Okay.
Oh. So what's going on here? Look, the new atheists like to pride themselves on being like rugged, independent thinkers. We come to our own conclusions based on the evidence and based on the data, and we don't take people's words for it. That's how they pride themselves. What you're witnessing here from Richard Dawkins is apparently when he was on stage, he said something just regurgitating the mainstream media narrative. What's the mainstream media narrative? Oh, all these people on these college campuses who are out there protesting. The reason why they're protesting is because they have this burning, passionate hatred for Jews. Full stop. They're just anti-Semitic. In fact, they're comparable to the Nazis, or they're comparable to terrorists. And they're violent even though they didn't commit violence. This is the mainstream media narrative. This is what you heard on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. The only exception was randomly Chris Hayes on MSNBC actually said some good stuff about this. But everybody else, wall-to-wall, meltdown, freak out, how dare they, they're anti-Semitic, they're evil, they're terrorists, they're Nazis, they're this, they're that. It was just wall-to-wall smearing and passionate hatred for these people. And Richard Dawkins, what did he do? He chugged down the propaganda juice. And so he regurgitates that on stage. All these protests are being driven by anti-Semitism. And then when he's confronted afterwards with the most obvious, straightforward question of all time, hey, why do you think that when they say they're doing it because they want to stop the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza, Why are you reading into it? Oh, you're just anti-Semitic. And what does he do? He melts down. He can't answer. His brain malfunctions. I'm not even sure he comprehended what the fuck was said. But it sounded like he said, of course they're not motivated by the slaughter in Gaza. And then he like pauses because he's trying to catch himself. And he's like, what? And then he flips out because there's a camera there. Look, I'm going to put this very simply to everybody watching this right now. Use your own mind. Use your own logic and your own reason. Look at the evidence. Which do you think is correct? Is it just that these tens of thousands of students woke up one day and decided to express their passionate hatred for Jews? Or is it why they say they're doing what they're doing, which is, again, written down, codified, very clear for anybody to read. They want their respective universities and colleges to divest from Israel. They don't want any financial ties with Israel, and they want to stop the genocide. Which is more likely? And that's the thing, right? Anybody who's being honest would answer that question like, yeah, it's the thing that they say. Even if you don't agree that it's a genocide or an ethnic cleansing, right? Even if you still are a Zionist and you love Israel, you can acknowledge this is their position. This is how they feel about it. But no, we get this sloppy hit piece from every corner of the media and every single variety and flavor of politician you can think of. And clowns like Richard Dawkins uncritically swallow it and regurgitate it. And look, you got to call a spade, right? In the case of Richard Dawkins, just like in the case with Sam Harris, I think a lot of it does stem from this very basic notion that he believes, as a general rule, the UK and the US and our allies like Israel, we are the good guys. We believe in the enlightened Western values, right? And the Muslim countries and the Palestinian territories, they're primitive Muslims who haven't undergone their reformation yet, so they are more willing to jump to violence and believe in violence, so their values are more barbaric and savage. Ours are good, theirs are generally bad. And so that's why if you're supporting these barbaric savages, well, then obviously you must just have an innate hatred for Jews. It can't be because you're against the wanton violence against Palestinian women and children and the destruction of all the infrastructure. It can't be that. So his own bias has clouded his judgment. It's a mix of his bias and then swallowing the mainstream media narrative whole. And it is fucking pathetic. Maybe they're not such rugged, independent thinkers as much as they led you to believe. That or homie's just so goddamn old that it ain't working upstairs anymore. Either way, it's not good. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.